Jaden Ivey is struggling pretty badly. What is going on with the Pistons' second-year player? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Ku Kahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Ku Kahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will see on today's show on the right side, you see the first topic was supposed to be about the Pistons loss to Miami, and then we talk about Jaden Ivey. But at the last second, I decided to make it audible. I didn't feel like going back and changing the screen. Decided to make it audible right before we started recording. I figured that this was something that everyone wanted to hear talk about first, and then we'll get into the Pistons loss to Miami, and then I want to talk about Taj Gibson, who has now signed with the Detroit Pistons for the rest of the season. So stay tuned for all that. But Jaden Ivey is probably, I don't know, like he's somewhere in the top 4 most important players for the Pistons. Some people probably have him second. Some people may have him fourth. I think it's very clear, though, that Jaden Ivey is extremely key and extremely important to what the Detroit Pistons are trying to do and what they plan to do moving forward, what they're trying to do at the end of this season. And in order for them to get to that point, obviously, they need him to play well. And it's actually kind of weird that the Pistons over the last 14 games, they have 4 wins, so they're 4-10, which is like, again, bad, but it's much better than it was earlier in the year. And over these last 14 games, Jaden Ivey's been playing atrocious. He's been terrible over the last 14 games. And that's with that game against that's with that game he scored 34 points where him and Cade both looked like they were, the best game they had played together. What game was that? That was against Brooklyn. That's with that game in the midst of that, where he shot 58% from the field, 66% from deep, and scored 34 points. Over the last 14 games for Jaden Ivey, he's averaging 14.5 points, which the points, okay, yeah, you'd like to see him score more, but that's not the thing that jumps off the paper. It's everything else after that. He's shooting 34.6% from the field. I'll say it again. Over the last 14 games, he's shooting under 35% from the field. Over the last 14 games, he's shooting 21% from deep. Over the last 14 games, he has a 47.4 true shooting percentage. The question has to be asked, I think, at this point, what is going on with Jaden Ivey? Because 14 games is a decent enough sample size, I think, of struggling to where you need to ask the question, okay, what's going on? The 14 games straight, with 1 game sprinkled in there, but 14 games straight of shooting under 35% from the field, that's enough to be like, okay, what's going on? What's happening? And I think one of the reasons, obviously, first, and this is something I brought up earlier in the year, and I got destroyed by Pistons fans for bringing it up, and I kind of jumped off of it. I jumped off of it when Ivey had that, a 15-game spree when he was shooting really well from deep and got his three-point percentage back up to, I think 35% from the field or 35% from deep. I backed off of it and was like, okay, fair enough. Maybe he's not, maybe I shouldn't be concerned about his outside shot. But I should never have jumped off that. I shouldn't have let you guys bully me into saying that. Jaden Ivey is a streaky shooter. At the very least, he is a streaky shooter. And talking with people that have followed him all the way back to Purdue, that's something he's been even all the way back into college. He's been a streaky shooter. He'll go through high highs and he'll have some low lows. And then he'll even out. Remember a few weeks ago, we talked about there's a reason why at the end of the season you have an average. Because throughout the season, I think Kate Cunningham talked about this. Throughout a season, there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. And you're probably somewhere in between that. You're not as good as your highest highs, and you probably aren't as good or as bad as your lowest lows. You're somewhere in between that. And right now, Jaden Ivey is shooting 32% from 3 on the year. And over the last 14 games, he's shooting 21% from 3. So I think that's that's number 1 on the board, is that he's an incredibly streaky shooter, and that's not good. That's not good. For him to have such long stretches of streaky shooting, too, is what's not really good at all. So I think that's the main thing that's causing him to struggle. He's not hitting his outside shot. So yeah, I think that's number one. Number two, James Edwards III was on the podcast. He was on the podcast last week, and we were talking. He mentioned that, hey, it's not just Ivey's three-point shooting. He's also struggling just to finish around the rim lately. Like he's struggling in almost every facet. And I didn't focus as much on that. I focused more so on, the five-man starting lineup that had Asar and Stu instead of Duran, or Asar, Stu, and Duran instead of one of the two with Simone Fontecchio. That's what I really focused on. But he's right. He's right. Ivey is not just struggling from beyond the arc. Ivey's struggling at every point of his offensive game, and he's not a good defender, so defensive game as well. Remember earlier in the season, I'd say it probably was around like December, we recorded a podcast, and I told you guys that Ivey was getting back to where he was as a finisher. People expected him to be as a finisher. I forget where exactly his percentile was, but he was I think he was like 70th percentile at the rim at that point. I forget what the exact number was, but he had jumped incredibly high. Like he went from being one of the worst finishers in the league to being extremely good. And we were talking about how that was a massive piece of development for him. Well, if you go to now, as of March 16th, let's just look at some of these numbers. Per synergy. As a spot-up shooter, he is one of the worst players in the entire NBA. He is in the 11th percentile, spot-up shooting. 11th percentile. He's one of the worst spot-up players in the NBA this year. At the rim, he's fallen now all the way to 32nd percentile in the NBA. He's scoring 1.1 points per possession at the rim this year. If you go to just half court, he's at... Oh, I just lost it. What happened? Can you get point? Oh, here it is. Okay, thank you. I was about to say. On layups in the half court, he is at 0.98 points per possession. So he's regressed in a lot of areas. Regressed a lot. And remember, last year, one of the reasons that had me believe in the offseason that, okay, if you draft Asar Thompson, if you draft all these guys, it'll work because Ivey, on uncontested three-point shots last year, was in like the 88th percentile last year. So I thought, maybe if you got him some more looks, you started to use some of his off-ball movement threes, you started to give him some of that stuff, that will really provide some gravity for the Pistons in their core. Well, this year, Jaden Ivey is in the 22nd percentile on unguarded catch-and-shoot threes. He's shooting 33% on unguarded, wide-open threes. That's not good. It's not good at all. On all catch-and-shoot threes, he's at 32%. It's not good. Not good at all. I don't know what's going on with Ivey exactly. I don't know. I don't know how he's regressed like this over the last 14 games. But he's had very high highs and very low lows throughout the season. Now at the beginning of the year, you can blame it on the whole Killian Hayes thing. The whole first 12 games of the year, you can blame that on when Killian Hayes was starting over, I'm sure. But even within that stretch, I thought Ivey actually was playing well in his minutes in that stretch. He just wasn't playing enough minutes. But anyways, even after that, he's had highs and he's had lows. He's had highs, he's had lows. It's been a roller coaster all year. And now it looks like it's evening out to being Look, I'm not trying. I know Ivey has a very rabid fan base, but this is just the facts right now. I'm just bringing it up. He's regressing to a point of having a very tough season. This is not what you wanted to see from him, or I guess you'd like to see him close the season out. He's at 43% from the field on the year. He's at 32% from three. He's under 50% on twos now. It's just he's at 54% true shooting percentage. Remember earlier in the year, he was extremely efficient. Now, there is one area that he's remained being really good at, and it's not no shock at all to me. Isolation. He's in 73rd percentile in isolation per synergy. He's just too fast for guys. You give him the ball in isolation, he's going to get to the basket, he's going to draw a foul. So he's been, that's not shocking to me. But every other asset or facet of his game that we all thought that was going to be, improved this year, and specifically me, what I was really banking, what I had believed in Ivey, what I was banking on him doing this year to really help accelerate the team and the core guys has really fallen apart. 11th percentile in spot up attempts. That's I mean, there's no other way around it by saying that's absolutely poor. That's terrible. That's terrible. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Ivey. Do I think he's going to continue to shoot 33%, 34% from the field for the rest of the year? I mean, I'd hope not. 14 games is a pretty decent span, though, of shooting 34%. I don't think I don't think he's that bad. He's going to shoot better at some point. But when? When is he going to shoot better? And when is he going to be consistently? Because this is not like there are inconsistent players in the NBA, but you can't have such low lows in your inconsistencies. Like Ivey's inconsistencies last for so long and hit such lows that just like a month and a half ago, he was shooting like 36% from three. Now he's at 32%. He's one of the worst spot shooters in the NBA. Like that's how high and lows his inconsistencies are. So will playing him, and the other thing, I saw some people saying, the lineup thing, the starting lineup with playing with no spacing. I was with that. Remember, I was arguing with that against James last week. But the last few games, they've had good spacing. Asari hasn't played. They've played with Simone Fontecchio. The team's won 3 games in the last 5 games. Like, the team is operating well, and they have good spacing. And that has not helped Ivey over the last 4 games. This is what he's shooting from the field. 33%, 30%, 38%, 21% from 3. 2 of 9, 0 of 6, 0 of 2, 2 of 9. Like, I don't know if that's the reason. I think Ivey's just he's been an inconsistent player, and he's in the middle of a decently long stretch of just struggling. And I don't think it's like, I don't think you're pressing the red button over it. I don't think it's that bad, but I do think it's a bit concerning. Yeah, I do think it's a bit concerning. So, I mean, let me know what you guys think. I know that Ivey has some strong fans. I'm sure everyone's just freaking out that I would even bring up the fact that he's struggling over the last 14 games. But let me hear from you guys. What do you guys think about how Jaden Ivey's playing? What's going on with him? Is it concerning? Let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter @Kukil. Now, when we come back, we'll talk about the Pistons' loss to the Miami Heat and what went wrong in that game when we come back. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. So my favorite pick here from Josh, by far, I think he's been the network's favorite pick with eBay Motors, is Grady Dick. And Josh Lloyd says the Raptors seem committed to giving us 30 minutes of Dick each night as they rotate in and out other players in their lineup. I think Grady Dick is the best pick here from Josh Lloyd. I think it's his best pick of the season by far. I think the Raptors should continue to play Grady Dick as much as they want and give the other team. As long as they want to keep giving them 30 minutes, keep doing it. Keep doing it. I think that's a great pickup. Everyone should go pick up. Everyone should go pick up Dick off the waiver wire. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you with your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows the championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and it's the same thing with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts from your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, wherever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time you'll get your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply at ebaymotors.com. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe on the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. That was probably like my favorite. That's probably been my favorite ad read of the whole year. I'm not gonna lie to you. See, the funniest thing is I had a little bit of a warm up with that ad read because everyone else recorded and posted on Friday. We're giving you guys a Saturday episode, so I was just watching everyone else, all my buddies here, all fall for the trap, and seeing their reactions is hilarious. So that was probably my favorite one of the year. I'm not gonna lie to you. Good job. All right, so the Pistons lost to the Miami Heat by a score of 108-95. Jimmy Butler didn't have that crazy of a game. Bam Adebayo, I thought was the Heat best player in this game. But Duncan Robinson continues to really. Duncan Robinson has some like finishes around the rim when he plays against the Pistons, and it just has me thinking like, dude, what's going on? How is he? Why does he do this against other teams? Like that's why I'd be leaving thinking when the Pistons play the Miami Heat. Caleb Martin had a good game for the Heat off the bench with 18 points. So what was the biggest reasons? Why did the Pistons lose this game? Well, I think the first reason, let's just get this out the way. The Miami Heat are better than the Detroit Pistons, okay? Like, we mentioned this in the last podcast. The Pistons have been playing better as of late. Yes, 100% they've been playing better as of late. And they've won more games over the last month than they did throughout the entire first 2-3 months of the season. 100%. 100%. But still, this team is not good. It's not like it's a good team. It's just a better team. And they were beating other bad teams. Now, again, they deserve credit. I made sure to mention this in the last podcast. They 100% deserve credit, and we should be happy with the fact that they're beating other bad teams. Because that would, if they had just like split the season series against all the bad teams in the NBA from start to the season to now, the Pistons wouldn't be the worst team in the NBA. The problem was that they were losing to the good teams, they were losing to the mediocre teams, they were losing to the bad teams, and they were losing to the worst teams, and they weren't beating any of them ever. Like that was the problem. So now they're just like a normal mediocre team. Now they're just a normal bad team where they can actually beat the other bad teams. Like that. So they deserve credit for that kind of thing. So not taking it away from them. But my point is the Miami Heat are simply a better basketball team than the Detroit Pistons. Okay. They have better players. They have a better coach. They have a better roster. Like from top down, Miami Heat are just better than the Pistons. But if we want to just, push the obvious out the way and really get into the weeds of why the Pistons lost this game and what happened in this game. Well, from my eye, what I saw, I thought Ivy and Kay did a decent job playmaking wise. I thought they did a decent job getting to the paint, or Ivy, I'd say, especially from Ivy, getting into the paint and trying to find guys open, especially in the first half. In the first half, Ivy did that really well. In the second half, so like in the first half, he had 9 assists. Second half, he had 0. So he didn't do it much in the second half at all. But in the first half, I thought Ivy was doing a good job getting to the paint and trying to find people, okay? Cade, I think you're seeing, especially against the Heat, that both times the Pistons have played against the Heat have flat out just doubled Cade. They flat out have just aggressively trapped him off of the pick and roll. And in the first game, remember, I talked about how Cade needs to trust his teammates a bit more and needs to stop trying to force the issue as much. And that leads to some of the inefficiency for him when he tries to force the issue himself scoring-wise against stuff like that. I said that literally after the last Miami game. And they did it again here. And I thought Cade actually did a fine job playmaking-wise. I mean, Jalen Duren had 15 points, 7 of 9 shooting. I feel like almost all of it came from Cade taking the trap, taking a few dribbles outside the three-point line to bring the trap further away, and then finding somebody and playmaking. So I thought they did a decent job of trying to utilize the 2-on ball that Miami was sending to Cade and then trying to create offense out of it. I thought they did a decent job of that. However, despite that, you need your best players to shoot the ball better. Like, you need your best players to still be able to score. So, like, for example, like Fontecchio had a good game. He had 24 points, 9-16 shooting. Would I say a lot of that came off the gravity of what was being thrown at Cade? Sure. Stu was 4 of 6 in this game. He hit 1-3. Did he have a decent game? Yeah, sure. He had a decent game. Duren, again, had 15, 17 points. Or 15 points, 17 rebounds, 7-9 shooting. Did he have a good game? Yeah, I mean, he played fine. James Wiseman, 3 of 6. I mean, okay. Fournier, 4 of 8. Yeah, I mean, 12 points, fine. Like, they were all right. I don't think none of those guys that just played horrific. They were all at least fine. The problem was that your best player in Cade Cunningham shot 5 of 15 from the floor, 0 of 4 from deep, and wasn't able to get things going. He had 11 points. He only had 1 free throw taken. I'm sure he's frustrated with that. I'm sure he probably would have wanted more free throws, but he didn't have a good game. He didn't score the ball. That's where the Pistons lost. Jaden Ivey was 3 of 14 from the floor, 2 of 9 from deep again. Like, that's why the Pistons lost this game, because their best players were not able to also contribute scoring-wise in efficient ways to help the Pistons beat the Miami Heat. Because, again, like I said, I thought the Pistons did a fine job of making Miami pay somewhat. And I guess maybe not. I guess this is basically what the strategy is when teams do this against the Pistons, when they put 2 on ball, is that, yeah, those other guys will have good games, but they won't have good enough games to beat us. Like, Cade can have a good enough game to beat us. So we're going to take him out the game, and we're going to see if another player on the squad is going to have a good enough game to win them the game. So I guess that is basically their strategy. So Simone had a fine game, a really good game. Duran had a fine game. Stu had a fine game. Fournier had a fine game. Like, these guys played all right, but they didn't play good enough, great enough to really make the Heat pay for doubling Cade. That's the bet these teams are making when they do this. And I think that's the next step. I think Cade has done a decent job of that, of finding ways to attack and score against that, despite how much traffic and how much is being thrown at him. I think he's done a good job of that, especially since the All-Star break. Since the All-Star break, we've talked about how well he's played since the All-Star break. I don't think we need to go over that. Still, even despite this game, he's shooting 46% from the field, 41% from deep, 24 points, 7.8 assists. Like, he's still, even with this game added onto that, over the last 12 games, he's been spectacular. And for that majority of that time, there's been a lot of attention thrown at him. But again, Miami is a better defensive team than maybe these other teams who were trying to throw it at him. They have better defenders to do so, with Jimmy, with Rozier, with Bam. Like, they have better guys to do this with, and they are a more cohesive team. So I think Cade is going to, and Cade struggled last time he played the Miami Heat, right? Like, last time they played Miami, he didn't have that good of a game, right? Yeah, that was the game he shot. He was 8 of 20 from the floor. Had 23 points. In that game, he had 8 assists. So I think against Miami, they're a good matchup against Cade from their perspective, to where they have guys that can throw bodies at Cade, and they have a game plan to take Cade out of the game, at least efficiency-wise. And it's not just all because they were throwing multiple guys at him either. Cade had, I think, 3 wide-open three-point looks that he probably wish he nailed all 3 of them. And if he nails all 3 of them, he has an 8 of 15 night, and maybe the game's different. But that happens. That you're going to have off nights. I thought, and especially, I think a lot of that happens when the other defense gets you out of rhythm and really asserts their dominance. I thought that's what Miami did. I think Miami's a better team. I thought Miami had a good game plan, and they took Cade out the game. They doubled him and forced him into really tough shots. They threw a lot of bodies at him. And again, like I said, the other team's idea when they do this type of coverage, when they throw this many bodies at him, is Cade can beat us himself. We don't believe these other guys will do enough to beat us, and we'll be able to do more offensively. We'll get more out of our defense doing this than allowing Cade to pick his spots and get to his spots and get his matchups. Like, that's the bet they're making, and they won that bet. And Cade needs to do a better job at trying to find a way to still be dominant scoring-wise and get to his spots. Despite that, I think that's another part of his game he has to grow from. He's in technically his second year, not freaking out too much, but that is the next step he has to learn to do. And he needs his secondary guy that's supposed to take advantage of these kind of things, the whole point of it, and Jaden Ivey to play better. That's the main thing. When Cade and Ivey are not going to have a good game, you're not going to win, no matter what the other team does. And if the team's going to focus on taking Cade out the game, you need Ivey. You need his secondary guy to show up. So Ivey needs to snap out of his funk and get back to being the guy that all the fans think he is. And Cade needs to do a better job at figuring out how to be aggressive and how to score against this type of coverage, while remaining in the mindset of creating for his teammates, like he did for Duran all night when they threw 2 at him, finding open guys. You have to strike that balance. You have to be able to absorb the double, take them out, and then let your teammates have 4 and 3s, and then also know that you need to find ways to score yourself. Like that, you need to find that balance. And so that's what they need to improve on. I think that's why they lost to the Miami Heat. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys thought about this Miami Heat game, why the Pistons lost, over on Twitter, or again, like I said, down below in the comment section. Taj Gibson, what was that? Taj Gibson signs for the rest of the season. I just have some quick thoughts on that. We'll talk about that when we come back. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want, how I want, no subscription required, and they send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations, pro styling advice. I keep what works and I send back the rest. My stylist always sends the just right pieces, and the fit is absolutely on point. It's like they have a style ESP. I don't know how they do it, but they just get me. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. I don't like to shop, and they save me time and effort. Plus, I get outfits that make me look and feel really good. And if you don't love something, again, like I said, you can just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free with Stitch Fix. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/locked-on. That's stitchfix.com/locked-on. stitchfix.com/locked-on. Get started today with Stitch Fix. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All I got to say about this Taj Gibson signing for the rest of the year, I got maybe like 2 to 3 things to say, and it won't be long. The first thing is I was wrong. I said when they signed him that I didn't know how much of an impact he could really have in 10 days after not being here for the whole year. Turns out, one, he's had a decent amount of impact, at least on James Wiseman, through 10 days already. And 2, they ended up signing him for the rest of the year. So maybe they bring me back even next year as maybe even an assistant coach. I don't think they want to waste a roster spot on just that, but maybe they bring him back as an assistant coach next year. Maybe that's something he's interested in, or maybe they do sign him next year. But I was wrong on that. He's had somewhat of an impact, at the very least, some impact on Wiseman, maybe even more on some of the other players. So that's one. The second thing is about time the Pistons have themselves a veteran. They need not even just one. They need veterans on the team. And I don't mean veterans that need to play 30 minutes. Like, that's not what they need. They need vets like Taj on the team. And you can see already in 10 games how, like, having one of those guys in the locker room really helps. And the last thing I want to say is this. I was talking to somebody close with the Pistons last month. I was talking with them. And, I was asking them, okay, so, what's going on? What do you think that needs to happen here? And one of the things that was brought up was the Pistons need vets. These young guys need some vets. And they need good vets. They need great vets. They need vets, again, not vets that are trying to take 30 minutes from or need to play 20 to 25, 30 minutes. Like, that's not the vets they need. They need good locker room presence, strong personalities, I'd say, and guys who have been there, done that, are interested in, at that point of their career, they are just interested in elevating the next generation of guys, like elevating the guys in that locker room and helping them get to the next level. And that they thought that was really important for all of these young guys. So, and Taj Gibson, he's obviously done that for at least James Wiseman. Again, that's what's been public, but I'm sure he's had some impact other places as well. So I hope the Pistons, while also obviously improving the team top to bottom at every spot possible, trying to get better, I hope they also prioritize getting veterans this offseason. That, again, veterans that don't need to play 30-plus minutes. Guys that want to be locker room presences, want to be leaders in the locker room, and can help, grow, help these guys get to the next step. I know for a fact, by the way, let me just say this. I know for a fact 3 or 4 veterans wanted to join this team this past offseason. I know all 3 or 4 of their names as well. And I don't think any of them needed to play. Like, I don't think you would need to play any of them, even though I think at least 1 or 2 of them probably would have been better than the options you had over the last year. But all of them had been really good players, either really good players, the stars in their careers, have went through the ups and downs, and they had experience at every key position the Pistons have. For their core 4 guys, each one of them had been at one of those positions. And that maybe that would have helped. But the Pistons didn't want to go that route. So I hope this offseason, the Pistons do prioritize getting some veterans, getting some guys to help teach some of these guys the ropes and really help them get to the next level, because it is important. And a lot of people I've spoken to around have said that is something that this team really needs, that these young guys really need. So I hope that's something they do get in the offseason. I think Taj has been a really good vet for the team, and cool to see him sign for the rest of the year. But that's all I've got for you guys today on today's episode of Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. That's all I've got for you guys today. Stay safe out there. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until next time, peace out.